Hey everyone, let's wrap up November. As usual, we'll start with videos. The non-bookish videos I uploaded were an end-of-year goals video, where I made a few goals that I want to finish by the end of the year. I haven't been really good with sticking to goals or talking about my goals and checking in with them on my channel. And so I have these few things that I wanted to finish by the end of the year. And I really thank you very much for your comments on my goals and also sharing your goals. It was really nice to see, and I hope we can all achieve the things that we set out to do. I'm not very far yet. Let's say it like that. The other non-bookish video was my letter to November, and as usual, I thank you very much for watching and commenting and enjoying those. Thank you. The rest of the videos I uploaded were about the books I read. So let's get to the books. We'll start with the physical books first. I read Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh, and I really enjoyed this. This is the story or following an older woman who is just recently widowed and moved to a new place, and she discovers a note about a dead body on her daily walk with her dog. So she starts investigating and making up a lot of stories about this murder or the person that is murdered and starting to research. I think it's just a few days, the whole span of the book, and we're mostly or totally completely in her head. So the more we read, the more we start to figure out about her life and how unreliable a narrator she is, because we don't really know what's true. We only know what she thinks, and it becomes more and more apparent that she is not really on top of things, and things are weird, and there are coincidences. The next book I read was The Monsters We Deserve. I made a video about Death in Her Hands and this book together, so not too many details either. This one is strange, and it's also mostly set in the head of the narrator. The narrator is the author himself, Markus Stechwick, and I really enjoy his writing and his approach to stories and things. In this book, he locked himself away in a little hut or chalet in a mountain and a forest, very secluded, to finish a book or to write a book. And the book starts off with a conversation between him and you. After a while, it turns out it's not you, the reader, but you, the publisher. But you still feel addressed. And that's what I really enjoyed about the book, that you feel personally involved in the story, in the action, and the things that happen. The things that happen turn out to be him talking about the book and also talking about the book that he wants to write, but also critiquing a classic and getting into conversation and interaction with that classic. And I enjoyed it very, very much. Like I said, review is up. The next book I also reviewed is Braised Pork by Yu. This is a debut novel, and it is set in Beijing, and it's all about this young woman who discovers her husband dead in the bathtub one morning. And we learn about her life afterwards, her life with her husband, and also in general about her life. And there is some form of magical realism going on, which I still don't fully understand what it wanted to tell me. But in general, it was an enjoyable read. I don't think it's a book for everyone, and everyone will enjoy it. There are a lot of things where I thought I would have liked more this direction or to know more about that. There are quite a few things that are touched upon, but I didn't feel go into depth. But it's an interesting idea of dealing with the loss of a husband and a way of life, because she had to change her life afterwards, or it changed automatically due to the loss of the husband, and how to deal with that, and in general with grief. So it was an okay read. More details in the review. I read Where Reasons End by Yiyun. I can't say I much liked it. The writing stayed the same, and it didn't stand out. It was okay to read, but it didn't impress me in anything. The story of this book is basically a mother having a written conversation with a son who killed himself. So we have a conversation that basically is all in her head as well. So a lot of books happen in people's heads this month. But in this book, we have the conversations where she talks her thoughts and also the thoughts, or she imagines the conversation part of her son. And while it is an interesting idea for grief, I didn't think the book progressed. There is no movement. It felt an ongoing conversation. And the more I read it, the more uncomfortable I felt because she kept him alive in form, or sort of, where he didn't want to be alive. And she made up his part of the conversation and taking over his side. And I don't know why that made me so uncomfortable, but the more I read it, the less I liked it. So I came away from the book thinking, okay, I read it. It didn't tell me anything. I didn't see any change in her or in her idea of her relationship with her son. I know that the author herself lost a son to suicide, and as far as I know, the author also attempted suicide. So there is a lot of personal things going on, but that doesn't automatically make for a good book. The last physical book I read was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This edition also contains Through the Looking Glass, and I thought it was very interesting to read a text for the first time that I had never engaged with the original before. I, of course, know the stories of Alice in Wonderland, and I have seen adaptations of it, also of Through the Looking Glass. The characters were familiar, the ideas were familiar, but I had never read the text. And it was very interesting to see how, in the first book especially, I thought Alice is an annoying know-it-all. She didn't come across as likable. The characters were interesting and weird. The writing is fun. It was good to have read, but I don't know more to say about it because I was so familiar with the characters and the stories that it was hard to form a separate idea about the book. The rest of the books were listened to on audio, and for 2 of those I made reading vlogs. The first one being The Convenience Store Woman, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. I enjoyed the story of this convenience store woman, this woman who felt a little bit disconnected and unable to react in a normal way, what people expect or think of being normal, and have normal ideas and aspirations and things. And we see the whole book from her perspective, get her thoughts, and see her interacting with people and how she gets along. I thought it was rather well done, and I also liked where it went. The whole book is sort of a commentary on social norms and social expectations and what happens when you don't fit in. Like I said, there's a reading vlog up without spoilers where I go into more details on my thoughts. I also uploaded a reading vlog on Ready Player 2. That is also without any spoilers. So this is a sequel to Ready Player 1. And I started off being really confused because at first I didn't even know there was a sequel and that this was going to be a series, so I didn't know what was going to happen. So the book basically picks up where the first book ends. There's a few weeks in between, and we get everything that is happening in retrospect, and we get it told, and the beginning is rather strange, and you feel very disconnected to the characters, and I also felt that the characters themselves, especially the main character and narrator Wade, changed, and not to his betterment. There were a lot of things that changed throughout the Oasis. There is a new way of entering the Oasis, which makes everything more immersive, I think is a word, where you feel what the people also feel. So it's not just wearing haptic gloves, but really being inside another body and feeling everything they feel, which opens up discussions on a whole lot of topics. And some of them are mentioned in the book, others not. There were some ideas that are followed throughout the book, which I think are followed through to the end, where others are just mentioned and then forgotten again. That is something I also experienced in the first book, where I thought there were some criticism or commentary made on social situations or climate change, anything, but it was sort of a side note. And this happened here again. The book starts off very slow and not on a good note for me. Then the middle part is sort of similar to the first book, where it's also an Easter egg hunt and they're searching for clues and trying to find out things to solve a riddle. And the ending goes somewhere where I'm like, what the hell just happened here? Do we need this? Is this just to prepare us for another sequel, for a third book? And what do we want to do in that one? I really don't know. I think if you like the first book, you will also like this one because it's very similar. And like I said, the huge middle part was just as enjoyable. Then I listened to a short story by James Joyce, Araby, and I listened to it twice because it's only 15 minutes and I still don't know what it wanted to say me. It was well read, it was for free in the Audible Original Plus membership thing included. So yeah, I tried it, it was nice to listen to it, but I can't say much more about it. Sort of like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I listened to that, it was very well read, it was nice to listen to, but I don't remember much about it. I've seen the movie before, and I think the book had a little bit of a different touch to it, addressing the different problems at the different times. In case you didn't know, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button is where this kid is born old and ages backwards. So the older he gets, the younger his body is. And his mind stays, in the beginning, very smart and fresh, but towards the end, he turns into a baby and basically dies as a baby and doesn't remember that much anymore. So it was well done, it was well written, it was interesting to have read, but nothing much more to say about it. The rest of the books I listened to were non-fiction books. There was Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey, and it's a memoir where he talks about his life and thoughts and ideas and notes from his notebooks and diaries. He narrates it himself, and it was highly enjoyable. I didn't have any expectations for this book, but it turned out to be hilarious. He has had kind of a weird life and strange things happening to him, and he's sort of a weird guy, I would say, but there were a lot of things that made him even more likable. I do like his work as an actor already, and so I think I want to catch up on things that I haven't seen before and maybe find out more about the things that he has done. I can highly recommend this audiobook. It's definitely worth listening to. Ace was a very interesting book that I can highly recommend to anyone. There are a lot of details in the book that I cannot put together and sum up perfectly. But this is a book looking at asexuality, what it means to have no sexual attraction, or what various ideas of sexual attraction and sexual pleasure and in general social norms we have about sex and what it means in our society and the effects that has. I really enjoyed that. It was a combination of more or less research information and given personal accounts of people who have experienced lives where they tried to fit in to ideas that were not their own or that didn't feel natural to them. And it is definitely worth reading for anyone to understand how different people are in their ideas about sex and even wanting to have sex and sexual attraction and all the things. I definitely learned quite a lot and it gave me a lot to think about. Highly recommended. The last two books were two non-fiction German audiobooks. I listened to Alte, weiße Männer, which is basically interviews with old white men and successful men in Germany. And I didn't know a lot of these people. I thought that were interesting interviews, but they weren't groundbreaking. There was nothing much to gain from. I came away from the audiobook thinking, okay, it was interesting to hear or listen to these conversations and interviews and about how the author felt about that, but that was all. The author is a blogger, a feminist blogger in Germany, apparently. I didn't know her, I just stumbled across the audiobook and thought I'd give it a try. I don't know if it's worth reading. The last book I listened to was a personal account of a Black woman growing up in Germany, and it's well written. I really enjoyed it. Alice Hasters reads it herself, so it really gives more of the personal touch. It is a lot about her personal experience, but it's also addressing general concepts of being Black in Germany and growing up Black in Germany and what Germans think about themselves and their relationship with racism and what racism is and how they actually behave. Now, this book was, like I said, it gave a personal account and some other background. If you have never read anything in the racism in Germany topic, or in general how the different perspectives of growing up Black in a white community is, then this will give you a lot of information. If you have read quite a few books on the topic already, then this will feel a lot like repetition, things you've heard before, and that what stands out is her personal experience of her life so far. She's a young journalist here in Germany, so worth reading, I would definitely say. It's a nice introductory book, but it's also always good to hear more personal accounts of how other people experience life in the same country where you live. So I would recommend it, yes. I had a very good reading month in November. I enjoyed the time I spent with the books, even the books that I didn't particularly enjoy or come off taking much away with. I'm quite happy that I have read all the books and picked them up. So that's a good thing. Let me know in comments how your November was. Any good things, any bad things? Did you have a good month, bad month? Let's talk November. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.